Hey, how are you doing, everybody? This is All Source News, also known as Stefano Rittendale, and I'm here to give you guys another long format video to cover some of the updates that we've seen related to the Sinaloa Cartel Civil War. We did see a lot of developments, a lot of the actors, a lot of key figures have been detained, and I think it's time to kind of start the new year to kind of give a summary of what we saw, at least in the last couple of months in Sinaloa, who were the key figures that might have been detained and captured, and what we might see in 2026, how the Sinaloa Cartel kind of moves forward. With that, I'll start this video off as always, kind of doing a map analysis, and then we'll go from there. So as you can see here, we have the active cartel map, which is, as always, I'll share the link in the video description so that you guys can check it out. This is the most accurate map out there, really. And although it's not necessarily updated every day, it does provide a better understanding and picture of kind of which are the primary cartels and where they're more active at. And as you can see, kind of in the situation of Sinaloa right here, I mean, there's a lot of intense areas of violence. Again, just as a reminder, this area here in yellow is called Chapo Isidro. This is the Chapo Isidro organization. These guys, also known as the Guasave Cartel or the Mesa Flores organization, they're very much active in the center within Guasave, Sinaloa, which is right here. This area over here is Los Chapitos. This kind of light blue, and the purple being Los Mayito Flacos. And then lastly, obviously, this kind of red, dark red orange is the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Well, as you can see in Sinaloa, there's a lot of areas of violence and intense conflict. We do see continuation of Mayito Flaco and Chapitos kind of battling for each other for control. Obviously, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, as depicted kind of in this alliance right here between the Chapitos and Jalisco New Generation Cartel, are very prevalent. They call themselves Las Fuerzas Especiales Unión, or FEU. They also have an alliance with kind of a much smaller one. I had to really zoom in right here. These guys, Los Guanos, Gente del Guano. The Chapitos and Gente del Guano with Jalisco New Generation Cartel have an alliance. And then the Chapo Isidros, obviously, with the Mayito Flacos, have an alliance, and they're battling each other out. So this is a very multi-front conflict. And violence is kind of really skyrocketed in Sinaloa in 2025. You know, homicides have gone up over 400% since the Civil War started. And a lot of the violence that we're seeing kind of centered around is across Sinaloa. But lately we've seen, in the last couple of weeks, we've really seen violence here specifically in Escuinapa Delgado, right here, which, you know, here they have kind of under los Chapitos. We are seeing the Mayito Flacos really press forward and try to launch this kind of offensive to try to seize significant amount of territory here. I mean, it does look like the Chapitos have been able to kind of prevent the loss of the city and the town from the Mayito Flacos, and what we're probably seeing is the Mayito Flacos do much more hit and run attacks rather than a dedicated assault to really seize the city. It looks like those Chapitos, with support of Jalisco New Generation Cartel, because again, it's right by the Jalisco New Generation Cartel territory, they've been able to kind of hold on, but the Mayito Flacos continue to press a lot of attacks, hit and run attacks and offensives here. And the question is, I mean, how much longer can Los Chapitos and Jalisco New Generation hold it? Can the Mayito Flacos really seize it? Or is the Mayito Flacos, you know, wasting manpower and resources to try to seize Escuinapa Delgado? You know, what I'm going to do is let me show you guys actually one of the videos to kind of highlight recently. This video is from yesterday. It was uploaded. I will note it was uploaded on a channel that where I found it was much more aligned to, let's say, Los Mayito Flacos. It is a Mayito Flaco kind of information channel, but I do want to show it because it does indicate, again, that the Mayito Flacos are very interested in this town. But the issue is they haven't been necessarily successful in actually seizing it, but we are seeing the hit and run attacks. Let me pull it up for you guys right now. So before I click play, this video is from a Mayito Flaco member, directly from his perspective. They're in Escuinapa. They're trying to find a Chapitos target that they want to attack. So with that, here's the video.
¿Estás?
What's interesting here is the use of smoke. That's something that I've rarely seen before, them dropping smoke as cover to conduct an attack. That was a very interesting tactic I've seen. As you can see, although this is one vehicle, it does look like it's a multi-vehicle convoy in this attack. advanced military tactics to counter these attacks.
Dale. Sí, ahí está la troca, Ahí está la troca. ¿Dónde? Ahí está la pinche troca. ¿Esta? Simón, dale.
What there's highlighted, there's a truck there that belongs to the Chapitos and they're going to attack it. So that's what they're saying in the video. Attack the truck. We're walking to the Chapitos.
Ahí está.
And as you can see, it's a hit and run attack. They get in, time to go. You gotta go. And then they leave the area. And that's kind of the gist of the video. As you can see, the vehicle they just passed by. Go back to there. I'm gonna just go back just a second. If you can kind of, let's see if we can get it. And I think it was around. It was an up-armored vehicle that they drove by. This is right here, let's see. Try to see when they drive by it. You can see it's an up-armored vehicle. Right there. So you see it's kind of really right there. You kind of saw the turret. You know, that's it looks like this was a Chapitos vehicle that they managed to attack. Right there, you can see the turret up here. This is what in Mexico, these are called monstruos or monsters. They're basically up-armored vehicles. I guess the best example to highlight them is these are Mad Max vehicles. We do see them, for example, we have seen ISIS use this kind of thing in Syria and in Iraq. And it's a very similar construct, so it does look like this is one of the vehicles that they attacked before they drove away. But again, as you see, this is a hit and run. This wasn't a full-scale, we're going to come in and seize this actual area. It does look like this was more of a hit and run and attack that they kind of go in and go from there. And I think it just kind of highlights how this is a major focus right now for the Mayito Flacos. Again, large areas of Sinaloa is, but what we're seeing a concentration of the Mayito Flacos is in Escuinapa, Sinaloa. Going back, that's kind of the Mayito Flacos, but now if we kind of zoom out a little bit and we kind of go back, what we're seeing in the northern part is a lot of the fighting right now is also centered around the Chapo Isidros, who again have an alliance with Mayito Flaco. And one of the factions under Chapo Isidro is called El Músico, right? He has one of the guys. That used to belong to the Chapo Isidros, and then they broke away, and they're called Los Calabazas. The Calabazas used to belong to Chapo Isidro. They broke off. They've been fighting it. It does look like Los Calabazas now have an alliance with Chapo Isidro. I'm sorry, not with Chapo Isidro, apologies, with Gente del Guano. So Calabazas and Gente del Guano fighting a lot against Chapo Isidro, specifically Músico, and that's kind of depicted here, right? There's war between FAU, which is Chapo's, Guanos, and Jalisco New Generation Cartel, and Chapo Isidro MF. This is kind of one of the key areas in La Tuna. We've seen a lot of that. La Tuna, which is important about La Tuna, is that is the hometown of El Chapo, who's in U.S. prison, the founder and former leader of the Sinaloa Cartel. So again, Gente del Guano, Calabazas. We do have other presence of Chapitos and Jalisco New Generation Cartel fighting against Mayito Flaco, but more importantly, Chapo Isidro, specifically El Músico, and we've seen a lot of the violence there. And if you zoom in a lot of these areas, this is kind of where a lot of the fighting is happening. And these are very much like remote areas, mountainous area, borders, Chihuahua. You see a lot of these these areas and towns that are they're kind of the center. And this Badiraguato, which I did a video about them before. Right here, Badiraguato, this is, cartel homeland for the Sinaloa Cartel and Chapitos. El Chapo was born in Badiraguato, right? This is the cultural center, if you want to say, or kind of like the Mecca of Los Chapitos, of the Guzman family. And this has been under the control of Gente del Guano for a while, but Mayito Flaco and Chapo Isidro are trying to take that away from them and really trying to, battle a lot. Now, Mexican authorities have targeted multiple leaders. I had a lot of shorts that I kind of go about that. I've talked about how Los Chapitos have lost key figures and they continue to lose key figures. But another important aspect, and I just uploaded this short as well on my YouTube and TikTok, is how Chapo Isidro has been losing key figures, right? There's a guy whose name El Sargento that he was captured recently, right before the New Year's in Culiacan. He was a top figure of the Chapo Isidro organization. He was captured in Culiacan specifically, right here. He was captured in Culiacan. What's interesting about that figure who was captured is he was the first member charged in the second Trump administration under narco-terrorism charges, right? Specifically narco-terrorism. He was the first one. Mexican authorities have captured him. We do know that Mexican authorities have been really focusing on also Chapo Isidro and targeting a lot of the key leaders, and we're seeing that right now. But the violence continues unabated, right? Also in one of my shorts I highlighted is how Chapo Isidro under Musico, one of the key leaders under Musico called El Pichu, he was killed during fighting against los Chapitos, Gente del Guano and Calabazas. It looks like he actually might have been killed because of one of those quadcopter drones dropped explosive devices on him, and then he died that way. So again, a lot of the violence in Sinaloa continues to intensify, continues to expand. We see the Mexican government target Los Chapitos. We see them targeting Chapo Isidro more so than any other cartels. I would say they probably target more Los Chapitos, then they target also Los Chapo Isidro, then probably to a lesser extent both the Mayito Flacos and Jalisco New Generation Cartel. But a lot of the Mexican government response is actually probably much more centered around this area, from Culiacan up north into Guasave, in this kind of generic area. Another area that there's always a lot of rumors and suspicion is our Gente del Guano. We do see Mexican security forces conduct operations against members of Los Guanos as well. We done seen that the Mexican government in December launched multiple operations in Sinaloa and in Durango in areas where Gente del Guano operate. And one of the other aspects is, we always talk about Los Chapitos. When is, Ivan Archibaldo, the leader of Los Chapitos, going to fall? The question also then becomes, when is El Guano going to fall, right? So Ivan Archibaldo, son of El Chapo, leader of Los Chapitos. Gente del Guano is is El Guano, this man right here. He's the brother of El Chapo. We do know also a lot of times the Mexican government has conducted operations against Gente del Guano, and they've targeted him. And the question is, when is El Guano specifically going to fall? His full name is Aureliano Guzman Loera. We just call him El Guano. That's something else that we need to look at for 2026, right? So again, in 2026, what I would be looking at is the key leaders of Los Chapitos and Chapo Isidro, right? Ivan Archibaldo and Jesus Alfredo are the key leaders of Los Chapitos that are remaining, really, because a lot of their lieutenants and sub-lieutenants continue to either be captured or killed. Recently, we saw El Panu was assassinated in Mexico City, which I have a video of that on my YouTube shorts. That was a huge loss for Los Chapitos. And also the other one I would be looking at is El Guano. Do the Mexican authorities continue to target El Guano, and do they capture specifically El Guano? And then the last one also would be to look at is Chapo Isidro, who is fighting Los Chapitos and El Guano. We have also seen members of Chapo Isidro captured by Mexican authorities. And that's kind of the key area of 2026. Look, the violence in Sinaloa isn't going to end. It's not going to end. Even if Los Chapitos and the key leaders of Los Chapitos fall, Jalisco New Generation Cartel has already established themselves in Sinaloa. They are not leaving Sinaloa. They're not. There's just no reason. So even if we run into a situation where, because Los Chapitos, for example, have a lot of leaders that have been captured or killed by Mexican authorities or their rivals, right? If there's a situation where the leadership of Los Chapitos is gone, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel continues to absorb Los Chapitos. They continue to absorb it. So if Los Chapitos fall completely, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel is establishing themselves and staying in Sinaloa. That's a fact. And the Mayito Flacos are going to have a very hard time fully kicking them out of Sinaloa. So we can run into a situation where maybe, because of pressures from Chapo Isidro and Mayito Flaco and the Mexican government, key leaders of Los Chapitos fall. Right? Because that's kind of the trend that we saw in 2025. More and more leaders of Los Chapitos continue to fall. That's probably what we're going to see in 2026. If those leaders fall, there's still a lot of fighters left, and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel have already established themselves. They're going to continue fighting. The other areas I would be looking at, for example, El Guano. Right? El Guano has been able to kind of evade Mexican authorities for years. I mean, he's a master at hiding. And the problem with Badiraguato, in that kind of area of Sinaloa that I showed, and kind of the border area with Durango, it's very remote. Mountains, mountain ranges, very easy to evade and detect any Mexican operations. El Guano can probably evade. But, even with his capture, it's the same thing with Gente del Guano. They're not necessarily a large player within the whole construct of everything going on, but the Jalisco New Generation Cartel has already established themselves in that area, right? And so I think that's kind of what we might see. If we see those Chapitos and Gente del Guano fall, or the leaderships fall, Jalisco New Generation Cartel is primed to kind of absorb all that. And you might run into a situation where then those Chapitos and Gente del Guano, on paper, are independent cartels continuing the fight, even with the loss in the leadership. But in reality, they're just now absorbed in front of Jalisco New Generation Cartel, right? On the other side, in the Mayito Flaco side, and the Chapo Isidro side, Mayito Flaco has a lot of forces available for him to really push forward, and we haven't really seen any attempts by the Mexican authorities to capture Mayito Flaco specifically. Yeah, some of his key lieutenants and key leaders get captured. We did see, for example, one of the leaders of those Anthrax, which is a key faction of the Mayito Flacos, be killed. He died, right? But the Mayito Flacos continue to kind of push. So the one that I would be looking at is maybe more Chapo Isidro, which is what you have right there. Does Chapo Isidro, for example, does we continue to see his leadership and his areas targeted? And if that's the case, is the Mayito Flaco kind of primed to kind of absorb that region in Guasave and kind of continue the fight, right? So again, I think what 2026, when we need to be looking at and analyzing, is really from a leadership perspective, right? How many of those leaderships are still active? How many of those leaderships are still able to continue the fight? And then, if they're killed or captured, how does the organization continue to function and move forward? Does it have institutional strength? Can they operate without the leadership? At some point, there is a breaking point for every cartel, that they lose too many leaders, and no matter who you are, it just completely breaks down, right? Every cartel is like that. The question, though, is what is that breaking point? Is it a lot higher or a lot lower? I think, for example, Los Chapitos, they're starting to lose too many that a key loss, let's say Iván Archibaldo, might be a death sentence for Los Chapitos, right? But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that the entire organization of Los Chapitos collapses. It doesn't mean that they just give up and not fight. I do believe that's when we see Jalisco New Generation Cartel, as they've already expanded their influence, continues to expand it and seize larger areas. And those are the key areas of 2026 to look at. Institutional strength within the cartels. How does the Mexican government really, which cartel leaders do they target and go after? And then how does that kind of move forward? And how does the violence in Sinaloa, adapt or change based on the situation on the ground and the leadership captured and the institutional strength of each cartel? There's a lot of things that are kind of unknown. But one thing I think, unfortunately, is for certain is the violence in Sinaloa is going to continue. It's not going to end. And Sinaloa is going to join a long list of other states that we've seen in Mexico have intense level of violence. And Sinaloa used to be, because of the domination of the Sinaloa Cartel, a fairly safe state. Because of the Sinaloa Cartel civil war, it's now one of the most violent states in Mexico. And unfortunately, that's probably going to continue. But with that, I wanted to thank you for listening into this video. I really hope you liked it. Please let me know in the comments what are the next conflicts you want me to cover. If you have any questions, if there's things you liked or disliked about this video, let me know if you also would like me to continue to highlight some of these videos that cartel members upload and show how they fight and kind of the violence that they do. Obviously, I have to be very cognizant with YouTube and their, algorithms and what I can and can't share, because my videos can get taken down. A lot of the combat footage that I do share about Mexican cartels are on my X page or Blue Sky. So if you want to kind of get that much more raw access and how these guys fight and the videos that they upload, you can go to my X, my Blue Sky, and my Instagram as well. I upload all those videos there. X, Blue Sky, Instagram, same handle, all_source_news or all source news. I have the same profile picture. You can check it out there to have a better access. But if you like that, please let me know, and I'll try to see which videos I can maybe upload on YouTube so you guys have a better understanding of what the violence actually looks like in Mexico and the battles that's going on. Because I do believe there's kind of this misconception of the battles inside of Mexico and how people might think they're just gang warfare, when in a lot of aspects and sense, it's much more similar to what we see, let's say, in Iraq or Syria than, let's say, in the streets of Chicago and gang violence there, right? I actually have a whole paper I wrote for a think tank called Newsline Institute, literally laying out the militarization of drug cartels and how we need to update our thinking and our analysis of Mexican cartels and not just kind of just say gang violence and just kind of throw that away. It's much more equivalent to insurgencies and what we see going on. But with that, I want to thank you all for joining me in this video, and I wish you all a happy new year, and I'm very excited to continue to give you guys analysis about Mexican cartels in 2026.